I'm Tass Mellis of The Starters.
This is Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Delanon, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch Podcast. I'm one of your usual hosts, Mike Miller, and I'm joined once again tonight by Mr. Tom Hall.
Good evening, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. You?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Excellent. And first time in a long time, Mr. Josh Coyne.
All that glitters is gold. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Excellent. Love a bit of Smash Mouth.
All-star, innit? All-star.
Well, obviously, yeah. It wasn't going to be Walking on the Sun. I don't think I can name many more than that.
No.
Anyway, we're already going off at a tangent. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please do so. Rate and review us. We welcome those. If you're not following us on social media, make sure you do at Double Clutch UK on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to ask us a question or anything, if you don't want to hit us up on Twitter, email us admin@doubleclutch.uk. So as Josh alluded to there, we're going to discuss some All-Star today amongst some other things, but we might as well kick off with the All-Star game, which took place last Sunday in Chicago, 157-155 to Team LeBron. First time with trying a new format. Tom, what did you make of the All-Star game? Is it fixed? Have the NBA finally managed to make this thing fun again?
Well, I always have a bit of a grievance with the All-Star weekend. For the past few years now, we've taken our church youth group away. We always go to like the Peak District or somewhere really nice and take them away for a weekend. And it's always on the All-Star weekend, so I always miss it live. But then, luckily, this time I've had half term to kind of devote to catching up, which has been really good. But I've really enjoyed it. I think the new format was a complete win-win. The only feedback that I've seen on the internet has been positive, really, apart from the fact that Anthony Davis won it with a free throw. But in terms of the new, I think the Elam ending is what they're calling it, with having the score fixed and then just going to that, it's more like pick-up. I think the players enjoyed it more. The fans definitely enjoyed it more because it felt like an actual game. It was quite competitive. So yeah, I thought it was a great fresh change to bring.
Josh, you notoriously hate the All-Star game. Did it do anything for you?
It did a lot for me. As Tom mentioned, the Elam ending, I think, was a game changer. And then generally speaking, just the attitude of the players. And a lot of people will generally kind of tie this to various different things, whether it be Kobe, whether it be the new format, or whether it just be the kind of way that the All-Star game had started to kind of become almost diluted in terms of the enthusiasm towards it. There just seemed to be kind of this newfound enthusiasm on court. That could be the changes in the format, or it could be the Kobe thing. But either way, it just seemed that guys went out there and actually wanted to put on a show, even if the competitive nature, in my opinion, was a little bit overblown, because I think there was a little bit of play acting around that. But generally speaking, I thought it was a much more exciting and engaging game than usual. And that's coming from someone who, like you said, does enjoy frequently shitting on All-Star Weekend.
No, I agree with both of you. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought the game was remarkably better than it has been in certainly in recent memories. I wasn't that fussed about it ending on a free throw. I actually didn't mind, when compared to NBA games where there's that sort of, the last 2 minutes is just free throws where teams are just hacking to try and get back in the game, even though it doesn't work. The Elam ending, interesting. I didn't know what to expect. I was sort of cautiously pessimistic, and I just thought it was a fantastic way for it to end. So Nick Elam is a professor at Ball State, I want to say, and he's been devising this way of making games more competitive at the end for well over a decade now, and this is the first time that something as huge as the NBA has taken it on. It's previously been done in the basketball tournament, which is a sort of a pro-am tournament with the I think there might be a $2 million cash prize at the end of it, but they sort of have to score 8 or so in the final quarter to end the game. So this was significantly increased at 24, and it took a fair few minutes. What did it take? 38 minutes to play the final quarter or something.
Yeah,
which is mad. Chris Paul was quite influential in getting this brought into part of the All-Star weekend. Is anyone else intrigued to know what else he's had a hand in? Because obviously the Supermax contract, there's this. I can't wait for his autobiography to come out after he retires to find out how much stuff he's sort of tinkered with over the years. It's really quite forward-thinking, and I'm surprised that a player was that heavily involved in it.
Yeah, and he won't stop until the final player has tucked in his shirt. But no, I agree. That would be really fascinating to see the changes he'd made. But also, it's really interesting listening to all the various interviews with Elam about the format. It did make me think. Imagine if kind of every time a structure of a game was changed, or there was a kind of new wrinkle added into a game, if everyone got their new idea named after them. So, like, maybe if we can, as a organisation, Double Clutch can propose to the NBA a new way of beginning the game and make the Double Clutch beginning where you literally have to start the game with a Double Clutch layup. That could be an idea anyway. But I thought that it was really a really good change of feel. I thought that it was interesting. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys said about the who kind of seemingly pushed that competitive side of the game as well. Because for me, it was Kyle Lowry. What did you think?
Yeah, I think Kyle Lowry was the main guy. Obviously, the guy taking charges and stuff, which set the tone for that competitive stuff that we've not seen as much throughout. And I just think that with the new format change was what made it so competitive for me, and kind of drove all the players and pulled them alongside them to play with such heart and such fight. Another thing as well for me is that, you know, when what I'm alluding to when I said that they were play acting a little bit is on every call when it mattered, they were all crowding the ref, and the cynic in me was kind of watching it and thinking, like, there's no way they care this much about that. I know it's for charity and that's great, and it's all for a really good cause. But they were acting as though they were more outraged than they do in regular season games, you know. So I whilst I really appreciate it, I do want to kind of point a finger at some of the nonsense that went on. Yeah, and I don't know what you guys think, but whether there was an air of, yes, they were trying to make it more competitive with the format change, but also because of all the Kobe stuff that's happened, and he was renowned for being this amazing competitor that just wouldn't stop, whether that played a part in defining the competitiveness as well. And so next year, even if they keep the format changed, perhaps we don't see it as competitive as it was this year.
I think it probably had some influence, given how recent that tragedy was. It had to be, you know, the fact that they named the MVP award after him, the fact that they're going for 24 in the fourth quarter. There had to be some kind of let's do this for Bean. I wonder, going back to Josh's point, whether maybe LeBron got sort of bulk discounted acting classes for Space Jam and just gave them out ahead of time. But it was fun to watch. I can't remember the last time I've seen a charge in an All-Star game. I liked the sort of the competitiveness that's been subtly building between, I say to competitiveness, the trolling that Giannis is giving James Harden. I think in the draft he said he wasn't picking him because he dribbled too much.
Love it.
And then after the game he was like, well, we're gonna just attack James Harden every time because he's the weak point. So I wonder how that's going to fare for the rest of the season, because they've still got a game between the two teams coming up next month, I think it is. Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. What was your favourite point of the weekend?
My personal favourite part of the weekend was Giannis saying that about James Harden. I just thought it was so enjoyable, because I immediately looked. I mean, you know, we've got this idea now of All-Star Weekend, or certainly we did have this idea of All-Star Weekend being basically an opportunity for, after we basically convince ourselves for months that these guys have these like rivalries and this ill feeling towards each other. And as fans, we enjoy that. We want them to, essentially, people want them to knock each other's heads off. But then they arrive at the weekend, and it's basically, you're like, oh yeah, they are just a bunch of kind of friendly millionaires, young guys who have, like, they're exclusively the only people who know what each other's lifestyles like, and they get together, and this is the weekend where they can all be friends, and then maybe pretend and feign a little bit of kind of competition. However, for an actual rivalry to be enhanced during All-Star Weekend, such as the Antetokounmpo and Harden one, I just thought it was glorious. And like you, I did indeed look straight away at the NBA schedule and find out that I believe it's the 25th of March. I've just looked it up. It's the 26th. Yeah, so 25th of March at Bucks. I believe Rockets at Bucks. So I put that in. I put a pin on that one immediately. What was your favourite part of the weekend, Tom?
I always go straight to the dunk contest. More so this year as well because Aaron Gordon was in it. And that last one with Zach LaVine was one of the highlights of the All-Star games that I've watched in the past. And so going straight for that, even though he got completely robbed, I don't know if you guys agree. I don't know how he didn't win. The commentator sounded as stunned as I was. But I kind of get a bit tired of those dunks where I think Zach LaVine won with it last time, where it's just kind of like, look how far I can run and jump from the free throw line. And there's not as much imagination that goes into it. Whereas with Aaron Gordon, he's got to be one of the most creative dunkers that we've seen in the past. And so
I agree with that. He's incredibly creative. I don't think I get bored with the look how far I can fly from, but I get a bit bored with the I'm only going to do through the legs dunks, a different variation of the same dunk. That kind of irks me. Like, bring out a range of dunks. Let's see your versatility. But yeah, he was 100% robbed, and I've got no problem with him being upset about not winning a dunk title essentially, and what incentive has he got to ever be in it again? There's no point. He puts in these. I mean, you look at some of the dunks he's done, and they're just some of the best we've ever seen. And to never have been a dunk champion, it's just horrific.
Yeah, I mean, the one where you could see it slow mo, where the alley oop off the side of the backboard, where he reversed, and that was really kind of stupendous. There are a few thoughts I had on it. Obviously, as you guys, I'm not sure if you guys agree, but the Dwayne Wade thing was pretty kind of transparent.
Which bit was that? Sorry, are you on about Common's introduction?
No, the Dwayne Wade bit where, I mean, essentially when Dwayne Wade gave the 9, when it quite clearly
it's the dunk contest. Oh yeah, that's the Miami connection. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so everyone was immediately connecting that to the Derek Jones Jr. Putting pictures of them up on the court together in Miami. I thought that Derek Jones Jr. any other year would have been a really worthy winner. I thought he was excellent. Another thing that I would think about, and I want to kind of tread quite lightly here because I'm looking to speak to him soon, but Chuck Milan, the NBA dunk coach, I was a little bit wary going into it. I was thinking, so obviously he was employed to coach the dunkers, and I was thinking, so does that mean he's going to get to everybody that's taking part, or do they already have guys that they've trusted for years that they work with, etc.? From what I can tell, Aaron Gordon wasn't working with Chuck, and the winner was coached by the official NBA dunk coach.
I've not heard this one.
Conspiracy theory. I've not heard this one.
No, I'm not theorising anything.
I know that he was made available to all competitors should they wish to utilise his expertise.
But it seems as though Aaron Gordon did not utilise the expertise.
Interesting. I look forward to hearing that conversation. Actually, you're teasing it a bit. I'm looking forward to that one once you get it locked in and we get it out for everyone else to listen to as well. Given the disparity in talent between the two teams, are you surprised it was only a 2-point game?
I'm not sure. I think completely depends on the attitude of the teams. When they drafted each other, I did think LeBron's definitely got the better team. But then when Giannis is your captain and he's going to push everyone, even though he didn't have the greatest of games himself, I wasn't too surprised that it was close. What did you think, Josh?
I knew it was kind of eventually they were going to push it close. I'm not going to accuse them of being purposefully theatrical about it, but I knew that eventually it would be a competition. And I just liked to see mostly guys kind of using what they're good at a lot of the time. For example, if you saw kind of Embiid most of the time when he was getting it, when he did want to be competitive, Embiid was backing his man down, and they weren't necessarily guarding him as hard as possible. The previous iterations of the All-Star game, players that maybe make their living with the skill set of Embiid would be pulling out to the free throw line, trying to step back and shoot a three. So I did see that as kind of a pattern throughout the game, that kind of people were falling back on their specialities. And I think that actually is another thing that made people enjoy it more.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think there's a sort of a resounding agreement between the three of us that the All-Star game has been fixed. They can't walk away from this format now, not until they've run it into the ground at least anyway.
Do you think it's got any mileage in terms of using it in this mid-season tournament they've been talking about, the Elam ending?
Possibly, but not if they're... I don't see how they would do it in the group stages, because if they do this mid-season tournament, the pitch for the group stages was that it was into normal inter-conference play, so you can't have some of the regular season games be played one way and then others the other. But if it got to the, if they did the sort of the knockout stages afterwards, then sure, why not give it a go? What might create something unique about it that gives it that sort of appeal straight off the bat, given how well it worked in the All-Star game. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Sorry, Josh, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if they really did like it, and it seems from the kind of a reaction that it's received from the NBA fan base, if they liked it as part of the All-Star game, I think they'll have a few years where it's just an All-Star thing to really make the game special. But there's definitely some legs, in the future that could definitely be the case, because it's seemingly working basically everywhere where it's put in.
Yeah, agree. Okay, let's leave behind the exhibition game and get back to the real stuff that actually tips off tonight. By the time you listen to this, it'll be last night's games. The Cavs straight away back in the news, having only been in the news for bad things this year. Bye Beilein. They've sacked the coach. Say sacked. They've mutually agreed something. This is such a bizarre situation. So I don't know why they hired him in the first place, especially to 5 years. But essentially, not even one season into his contract, Jim Beilein has parted ways as the head coach. He's still going to be involved in the organisation in some form, which I have no idea what he's going to be, given that the stories coming out are that no one respects him within the team and things like that. He lost control of the locker room pretty quickly. Do you think he ever had control of the locker room? What do you think's gone wrong here, Tom?
It seems to me, obviously he was a really renowned and successful college coach. Came in with a team that was, I think at the end of the day, it's just been a really bad team and a bad organisation and bad place to be, with some young guys, but guys that really don't play well together and as a team, when you've got Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, and then veterans in Kevin Love and Thompson who just really don't want to be there, and now Andre Drummond, who you can add to that list, who was desperate for a trade, and then he has been there, a week, 2 weeks, and he doesn't want to be there either. So he always had a job on his hands, and then for a guy that's been known for teaching the fundamentals, which you need in college, and getting around guys and teaching them the skills as well as the tactics, it's not really worked when you've got a mix of those players that they've got there and the ages and experience. So for me, it was always going to be an impossible job, and it's proved to be that way in how it's played out.
Josh, what are your thoughts on the situation? Is it just, this is how bad the Cavs have been for a very long time now, which in my mind is kind of a testament to how much force of will LeBron has, that he was managed to appease it momentarily, but this franchise is just a mess.
Yeah, it is. It reminds me of the hangover that Manchester United have had since Alex Ferguson left. When you have a kind of a figure that really an enigmatic figure that kind of drives greatness within the organisation, and undoubtedly that's what LeBron James is. It's undoubtedly what Alex Ferguson was. Where people expect, actually, when you lose that greatness, the hangover is just insane. It's almost harder to get up to average when you've been so great and you plummet to the bottom. And whilst no one wants to be average, Cleveland at the moment, average looks pretty good to them. The Beilein thing is amazing because from what kind of knowledge I pick up from elite television programs such as Love Island and new Netflix dating show Love is Blind, is that if you have a priority, and in this case, Cleveland's priority hiring was Tom Izzo, and you settle in Love Island's case, you settle for another muscular, tanned, gelled-haired bloke, but he's not quite as good as the one that you initially wanted to go for. It's not going to work out. Beilein was. He wasn't kind of, I don't know, let's go for muscly Steve, but he was Hunky Keith, and Hunky Keith just I don't know why I went for Keith, but anyway, he was second choice. They hired him, it hasn't worked out, and it's quite clear why. He's clearly not somebody who could get them to buy into his ethos. Whatever culture they had doesn't suit his. He's clearly come in from a collegiate situation where his expectation is to discipline these kids like a teacher, be an authority figure. Unfortunately, in modern sports in general, you have to kind of toe the line of mentor, authoritarian, friend, and all sorts of figures. And he clearly wasn't able to do it. I mean, he literally called them thugs. And the reports that have come out since have been that the best thing ever, which was they kept playing songs about thugs at practice afterwards, which is unbelievable, because that's when to use a footballing term again, you've lost the dressing room. So the writing was on the wall at that point, I think.
And similar to that United comparison, when David Moyes signed with United, that was another, was it 5 or 6 year
What are you
contract?
doing to me with these football references?
Yeah.
I finally got someone else to talk to, Mark, who knows about football and basketball. But yeah, with Moyes, it was another 5 or 6 year contract. And then same with Beilein, it was a huge contract. Never going to fulfill those 5 years. And so I don't know if it's come out yet, but just in terms of what compensation he's got for leaving, whether he's done it in a mutual way or walked out or being fired, I'm not really too sure.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, he's basically been pushed up to the what was he, like an associate coach or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. He's basically going to get paid to go on holiday.
Yeah, they're not going to keep him around, are they? But he's walked away from. So he hasn't been fired, so they don't have to pay him anything. But he's walked away from. Did he sign a 4 or 5 year deal with a team option at the end? So a five year contract with the last season being a team option, and it was $4 million per year. So he's walked away from, this is year one, so he's walked away from at least $12 million, which is, things have got to be bad if you're willing to just go, you know what, I'm too old for this stuff. And not being ageist either, but he was 67 or is 67. I'm not dealing with this. You can keep your 12 mil and poke it. It's an odd one. The jump from being a college coach to being an NBA coach is huge, and I don't think it's necessarily appreciated or thought out fully, because if you look at the majority of coaches who have done it, the majority have failed. Like big college coaches like Calipari and Pitino failed when they tried it out working with the NBA teams. There's only honestly, I was trying to rack my brains for successful examples, and obviously you two are aware of the probably the biggest one, Brad Stevens in recent memory, Billy Donovan as well, but I guess he was helped by inheriting a good team when he came to the Thunder, whereas a lot of these guys are coming in, and the teams are terrible. I mean the Celtics when Stevens took over were not meant to be good at all, and he just propelled them forwards fantastically. But it's just odd to me that there is such a record of coaches dating back decades who try to make the leap and just for whatever reason can't. Even guys like Tex Winter struggled when he was a head coach, and he was huge, vital part of the Bulls and the Lakers and the triangle offense, and terrible head coach for Houston in the 70s, I want to say, having been a college coach for Kansas in the 50s, and just he's a legend, Hall of Fame coach, but not able to be a head coach in the NBA. And it made me think maybe, if you wanted someone like Beilein there to teach the fundamentals of the game, why make him head coach? Why not make him just an assistant who can stay away from the limelight, doesn't have to connect in quite the same way with the players as the head coach does, but is there to pass on his expertise? And maybe it was too small of a role for him, I don't know. But it just seems odd to me that that there seems such a fascination with getting these big name college coaches and expecting them to somehow transition to a new game for them with 9 times out of 10 an absolute car crash of a team.
Yeah, and I think some of it's definitely style. So in terms of you're not dealing with kids anymore, you're dealing with professionals, and so it's not all about the tactics and the way you're making teams play. It's about how you're looking after them as people and how you're developing them when you might not have the same amount of time on your hands. And the rest is, as you touched on, I think, with situations. So Cleveland being the epitome of that. But most of these teams that these new coaches go to, obviously because they're changing their coach, are terrible teams in terrible ways. So it's whether you're coming from college or you're just coming from another coaching job, I think you're always going to be in with a tough task. And probably most of these guys are destined to fail if you're not going to stay with them long term. So there are exceptions with Brad Stevens in that he's just a magician in my eyes. But I think the style and situations of all these teams plays a big part in whether they're destined to succeed or not.
Yeah, I agree. Also, it's quite easy to kind of lump college coach, make it a category that we then label guys under. But if you think about it, I mean, Brad Stevens, his whole thing when he was at Butler was harvesting the talent of a fairly underdog squad, in which exactly what he did. Beilein actually had decades of coaching, a coaching program that, yeah, sure, he had a big part in kind of making it what it was, but he was taking on major talent and basically kind of whipping them into shape. As Tom touched upon, there's no whipping into shape a bunch of adults who make more money than you. Unfortunately, it's just the kind of situation within the NBA. These are guys who don't need to be treated you just look at the endless guys who kind of, if you look at Boylan in Chicago, he's one of the old school guys in the NBA. Beilein was one of the old school guys in the NBA, and they're losing their players whenever they kind of, unless they move with the times, they're going to lose the locker room, and they're eventually going to either be moved up or moved out. And unfortunately, that was the case with Beilein because he just didn't have it. The other one I think is quite interesting is Hoiberg, because Hoiberg was basically thought of in the same realm as Brad Stevens when he joined, but he also was unable to kind of keep control of his locker room. So you have to think it's about the front office, the staff that you have around you in terms of being able to keep you in the position of head honcho and not allow you to lose the players around you. But it's definitely been tough over the years for college coaches.
Yeah, I think you're right about it being the front office around you and everything like that. I think from the top down, it has to be a franchise that is really locked into a specific direction, and I don't think Cleveland have been that at all. Let's move on to his replacement then. JB Bickerstaff has been promoted to head coach. His record. So November 18th, 2015, he was appointed the head coach of the Houston Rockets, finished with a 37-34 record, and it was the Rockets' worst records since 11-12. They lost in the first round to the Warriors, and he didn't last after that. But to his credit, didn't get a preseason with them, so it wasn't a fair shake at the stick of him sort of running it as his franchise. November the 27th, 2017, he was appointed the interim head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, took over from the 7-12 Grizzlies. Fizdale got sacked. He went 15-48, somehow managed to get promoted and hired as full-time head coach, lasted just under a year, and now they are, well, they got Ja Morant, and the personnel's changed, obviously, but they're now back in playoff contention quite quickly afterwards. What do you think his chances are of turning this pile of trash around?
Let me just note before I speak about his chances that his dad works for the Cavs as a senior basketball advisor. So that's worth noting, is that perhaps a bit of nepotism where his dad sorted him out. But
nepotism in the NBA?
Yeah, who'd have thunk it? But I mean, his record doesn't look good. It doesn't look pretty. If you look at everywhere he's gone, he's been kind of hanging around in the shadows, has been given the interim role, and then maybe given a shot at a head coaching role for like a year or a year and a half, and then eventually been moved on. If eventually you throw enough shit at the wall, something sticks, as the old saying goes. He just keeps getting goes and isn't able to stick around. He's not Beilein. He's half his age almost. So he really should be able to adapt to the modern NBA. You have to just think there might not be that nous that it takes to be a head coach, but I'd be happy to be proven wrong because he seems like a really likable guy.
Yeah, some of his job now is just got to be peacekeeping, trying to get all those guys to get on and actually pass the ball, because actually that's what they're being terrible at so far. All the guards just have got no assists or anything like that. So if you can get some kind of system in place where they're working it around, anything's going to look better than what they're doing now. But realistically, I think he's just someone who's going to take the job for the end of the year, and then as soon as the summer comes, they'll start to look around at who's there that could take them forward long term. He'll
be able to spend some time with his dad. They can drive in together, bond over their old times, share a lunchbox. It's going to be glorious.
Excellent. Okay, so let's graciously leave the Cavs behind. Let's move on to the buyout season, which is the next stage of this NBA season as we head towards the playoffs. DeMarre Carroll was bought out by the Spurs on Tuesday. The Spurs are going to take a cap hit for him for the next 3 seasons or so. He's going to sign with Houston. How do you guys think he will fit in? I mean, he fits in pretty well in that he's 6'6" and 215, so he fits in perfectly with their small ball style. But how do you think he's going to fit in? He's obviously not the player he was for the Raps a few years back.
I really like DeMarre Carroll. I think, although he's getting on now, he's 33. I think he fits their mould of 3-and-D, even though he's barely played this year, which is the only issue. I think he's played something like 15 games and averaged just over 9 minutes a game for each one of those. So we've not had a huge sample size. We don't know how much his game has kind of fallen off with age, but if he can do some stuff on the court similar to what he's been doing for the past few years, any minutes that he can provide on a Rockets team that is struggling for depth at those kind of spots, I think will be useful for them.
Yeah, I agree. He's never going to get to the level he was at before. 33 is quite an age to kind of start trying to add a second win to your career. I don't see it happening, but if it's just a case of being a role player, coming in, adding a little bit of toughness from time to time and lifting the bench, then I can see it being semi-successful in some iteration.
And I don't think he's going to be one of them guys that, even if he doesn't play very much, he's not going to take very much away from what you're trying to aim for. Whereas Jeff Green, on the other hand, he's someone who historically, who's also signed for the Rockets, who has historically played, taken up other people's minutes, and then not led to any positive production for your whole team. So, what do you guys think on that one?
Okay. Well, let's get straight into Jeff Green then, because he was next on the list. As you say, he's also signing with Houston. A little bit taller than they've been trending to at 6'8". But what are you expecting from him? Surely he's at this point. It's just similar to DeMarre Carroll. It's just he is there for a bit of depth, a few relief minutes here and then, and mainly as a locker room guy. Because I mean, like, I still can't, I get the whole Jeff Green thing being a bigger negative than a positive, and teams get better when he's not there. But I still have a huge amount of respect for him, considering 8 years ago he was almost out the league with a life-threatening heart condition. Had to learn how to walk again, and then made it back to the league. Like that amazes me. But that sort of in a vacuum, he's definitely not a kind of not someone who shifts the momentum in a game. Let's say.
No, Jeff Green, the person, is an absolute inspiration. Jeff Green, the signing for the Houston Rockets in the year 2020, is an abomination. I feel like I actually can't believe what they're doing. I love when you just see someone who's just gone so far in the kind of they're really doubling down on their whole thing, and you just think, I can't believe they're going this far with it. I mean, it's ballsy and it's crazy to just keep signing forwards that, if you looked at this at an amateur basketball league, you'd think, oh, these guys aren't that big. Jeff Green can't put the ball down. He seems to be the antithesis of what would make sense in an ultra small ball lineup. He can't put the ball on the floor. You don't gush at his shooting statistics. His passing isn't through the roof. Not an amazing defender. You think, okay, so if you're going to go and double down on this style where you're going to outrun people, outspace people, and outshoot people, then Jeff Green is like a laughable signing. What do you think?
I admit he doesn't have that sort of ability to spread the floor that they're looking for. I mean, he still provides them. I think he's almost going to be brought in as a relief big man. I think they're going to assume that despite the fact that he's only £235, he's got springs to him still, and they're going to somehow think he can be a help rim protector.
It's just unbelievable, though. I mean, if you were to take an alien from the 1995 and show him this, I mean, Jeff Green is going to be your centre, and you're going to be relying on him for rim protection. I can't believe what we're doing. What are we doing, Mike? What are we doing, Tom?
It's madness, isn't it? Did you guys see the photo posted the other day from I think it was the Ringer, of Harden, Westbrook, Green, and KD in their OKC days, and it sort of the tagline was saying, "Come on, Daryl, pull the trigger and go for the last guy." But it is weird that this sort of OKC lineup is reforming in Houston. Do you think it's a deliberate trolling of Sam Presti or something from Daryl Morey? He's just like, I'm going to distract from all of China at the start of the year and now just start trolling a tiny little market like Oklahoma. See, because I just can't work out how this is
trying
happened.
to win, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think these guys could win? I mean, obviously not. I'm not saying Jeff Green and DeMarre Carroll are the needle movers at all, but this Rockets small ball lineup, do you think this can win?
What do you mean by do you think it can win? Do you think it can win an NBA championship?
Yeah, that's the only win in my book right now.
Right.
You can win in the regular season, that's fine, but okay. My question is, yes, do you think they can win a title? But if not, what do you think success would be for this team? What do you think it would? Because they're trying to change the game here. So what level of success would you expect to see before we start seeing other franchises go, oh, actually, I want to roll with that? Well,
if they're really putting their eggs in the change the game basket, then I think the results ultimately, what success would be having a cultural impact on a shift into kind of ultra small ball, a kind of 7 seconds or less impact on the game. if you think, how far did the Suns go in the Western Conference at their absolute Steve Nash peak? Did they make the Western Conference Finals?
I've got a feeling, wasn't that they lost to the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals?
Yes, of course, yeah. And I think that would be a major success for the Houston Rockets, considering they are basically abandoning a entire position and an entire skill set and in an entire necessity to win a basketball game. I'd love to be proven wrong because I love interesting things happening in the league. But if you think about the shift in intensity when it turns postseason, and you think about how many game plans are being held in the pocket of NBA head coaches until the postseason, I think that coaches will be licking their lips in the Western Conference, hoping that they can exploit this. And whilst I absolutely love the ballsiness of Morey and the ever kind of willing, how he is always willing basically to try and change the game, because Morey has talked about it endlessly, absorbing tactics from different sports, etc. I love that side of things, but if you're going to try and win an NBA championship, you've gone further back. You've gone further away from it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think in terms of what would be a win for their season, I think if they could beat either one of the Lakers or the Clippers in the West, I think they would see it as a positive season. I think if they go out in the playoffs to anybody else in the West, then it's proven that what they've done and what they're trying is a failure. If they can get past one of those two, even if they don't make it all the way and win a championship, I think it would probably prove that there's some mileage to what they're doing. But like you, Josh, I think when I imagine these series being played out, when you think about people like Anthony Davis and even Kawhi and Paul George that aren't too much bigger than the guys on the Rockets, I just can't imagine anyone putting up the kind of defense that's required to stop these teams and actually let the Rockets beat them.
I desperately want this to work, just for the just how ridiculous it would be. Do you think that teams are going to fall into the trap of going, these guys are small, we're going inside, and then immediately they're taking lower efficiency shots unless they are within 2 feet of the rim?
I don't know. I think with some of it, it comes down to the fact that I think you can find more bigger men that can guard the kind of people that the Rockets are going to put out, but you're going to struggle to guard some of the other team's big men with the Rockets' small guys, if that makes sense.
No, I get that. Well, it remains to be seen then how the Rockets will fare. I desperately want them to do well. I just imagine, again, this sort of goes back to OKC trolling, but imagine if Harden and Westbrook can win a title and, essentially, what's his name? I can't remember the name of the GM. Sam Presti, there you go. Sam Presti essentially got rid of the wrong one of the three way back when. I mean, he's already sort of chastised for letting Harden go, but imagine if it got to the point where he let the wrong one of the three go. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I can't see them. Again, AD's a game changer for me in that series. I actually think they have a better chance against someone like the Clippers, just because their big man is their essential weak spot in terms of versatility. But let's stick with the Clippers for a minute. Reggie Jackson, another buyout off his expiring. I think it was on about 18 million or something for the Pistons. Part of that ridiculous 5-year, what was then a pretty close to max deal. He's signing with them as essentially a backup point guard. 6'3". He's 6'3". How long do you think his wingspan is?
I have no idea.
I'm going to say
7 foot.
Flipping heck! I was not going to go anywhere near that. But.
7 foot. He's got a 7 foot wingspan. That's just mad. But yeah, okay. So the guy's about to turn 30. He's a bucket getter. He's not bad shooting off the ball at all. I think 39.5% on catch and shoot threes this year. Puts up a reasonable volume of threes as well. Hasn't had much burn this year. Only 10 games. Do you think he's going to come in and do anything for this Clippers team? Because I can't. There's part of me that's going, what exactly are you expecting him to do? Because he's not going to be a secondary ball handler. He might be your secondary ball handler on your secondary unit because you've got Lou Williams there. Like, how do you see this guy fitting in to this Clippers team who need to now sort of lock in for the playoffs, Josh?
Well, here's what he's going to do for the Clippers. He's not going to sign for the Lakers. I've heard people talk about this already, but the other day, to go ahead with another ridiculous analogy, the other day I was visiting my girlfriend's family's house and I fed the dogs. They have a Great Dane and a King Charles Spaniel. And
wow, that's a pairing.
Yeah, it is a pairing. It's little and large. And whenever I've done that in the past, you give them a load of biscuits, one in a tiny bowl and one in a massive bowl. The Great Dane immediately goes for the tiny bowl so that they can just eat all the food, so that the other, almost basically to troll the other dog, goes immediately for the small bowl so that they can take all the food just so they don't miss out. That's exactly what the Clippers done. In this analogy, Reggie Jackson is the small bowl of food, and he's been taken from the Los Angeles Lakers so they can't get him and fill the need. Because out of the two LA teams, the Lakers are the team that need Reggie Jackson. The Clippers aren't. He's not going to play. He's not going to have any discernible minutes ahead of Pat Beverly or Lou Williams. He doesn't add anything better than those guys. He's not going to be a major part of the rotation, and actually if he was in purple and gold, he'd be playing a big part and filling a need that they actually have. So my opinion is he's not going to add much. He's literally just been picked up by the Clippers to one, troll the Lakers, and second, to basically potentially be a chip if they ever get a chance to get a big guy on board.
What do you think then?
So, and what rationale would he have then for signing with the Clippers over the Lakers? Because he's essentially, either way, he's on a team that could make the finals, but on one of them, he's on a team where his contributions could actually be impactful, and the other one, he's just going to rest up. What's this? Where's his competitive drive? Why would you make that decision if you are Reggie Jackson?
Well, because the supreme confidence and kind of insanely clouded judgment that NBA players have in terms of their own ability. There's no way that any of those guys think that they're going to be below Lou Williams, below Pat Beverly. So they might have been told that they're going to be part of the rotation. And then, it might not necessarily be the case. That wouldn't be the most transparent thing for the Clippers. But he'll bet on himself. If he's been given, there's a chance if you play amazingly well that you'll be part of a team that he might think has a chance to win a title, maybe even over the Lakers. And maybe he buys into the kind of hard-nosed style of those players and that culture that they're trying to build over there. And he thinks, maybe I can become a integral part of the team. But spoiler alert, Reggie, you probably won't.
Okay, so Tom, what is your take on Reggie Delusions of Grandeur Jackson?
I think, at the end of the day, the Clippers didn't give anything up for him because it was a buyout. So the only downside could be what we just said, is that either he is a detriment to their chemistry, or he suddenly decides that he's the best player in their team and just hogs the ball all the time. Similarly to what we said about Marcus Morris on a pod a couple of weeks ago, where he's a guy coming into a team that is so stacked with Kawhi and Paul George and Lou Williams and everyone else. And then suddenly you've got Morris and you've got Reggie Jackson coming in. And so what does it look like for these guys to share minutes, to share the ball, to share shots? I don't know. And obviously when Isaiah Thomas went there for an hour, he got waived. And so they've prioritised, and they wanted a guard still, but they're prioritising Jackson. And he obviously said about his wingspan, which is an immediate upgrade over someone like Thomas. So even if he doesn't dominate on the offensive end, he can still provide an upgrade defensively in that second unit. So It'll only be a downside, I think, if the chemistries get thrown off. But for me, it's a good move for the Clippers and one that I'd make.
Are either of you worried about the Clippers? Because I'm hearing people start to murmur, and they're not impressed with what they've been like this season. And from my perspective, I sit there just going, they're still not. They're waiting. They're still not playing their main guys to the degree they could or should. So are either of you at this point in time worried about the LA Clippers and their chances of being in the NBA Finals?
I actually remember people trying to force some narrative around Kawhi Leonard's Toronto Raptors when the season got a bit boring and content started to become a bit dry. People were maybe questioning whether the team will meet the potential when it comes post-season. Look how that worked out. I'm not worried at all about a team with Kawhi Leonard as the star, and they have enough depth and enough grit to win. A lot of the guys that they have, this is really their chance to win. How many times have we seen the postseason be a completely different game to what we've seen throughout the regular season? And I think that's going to be the case here. I'm not worried. I can see the concerns, but I think we're trying to create a narrative here. And they're actually just a really, really good basketball team.
Yeah, and we've hardly seen any minutes with their killer lineup on the floor together. Never mind with just Paul George and Kawhi playing alongside each other. And when they have, they've looked insanely good. So I'm not worried about them at all. I think, like Josh has said, as soon as it comes to playoff time, we'll start to see a different side to them, and they'll look like the juggernaut that their roster would say they are.
Yeah, I mean, it would be unheard of, really, to kind of get worried about a team that's only lost 18 games. It's only 18 games. I'm not worried about the Los Angeles Clippers at all.
Good. I'm glad you're in the same boat as I am. I don't understand why people are getting concerned. I get maybe there's some kind of trepidation that maybe they haven't got enough reps together, but that it worked last year in Toronto. I don't have any concerns with it working this year. I can see them. I picked them to win it, I think, in their pre-season pod. You were on that as well, Tom. I think we picked the same, didn't we?
Clippers.
Yeah, Clippers over Philly. We'll keep the Philly bit quiet for a while. Okay, let's look at the bottom of the standings.
Hold on.
Bottom of
you forgot the most killer buyout today. The Dragon Bender to the Golden State Warriors.
Get out. So, yeah, okay, my mistake. We've missed Dragon Bender, who was waived by the Bucks and is now on a 10-day contract with the Golden State Warriors. He was the 6th pick.
Fourth?
When was that? 4th pick? It 2016 like he was the 4th pick then. And he's, 22?
Yeah.
This is last chance then?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately it depends on the support that he gets from the front office and also the staff actually at the Golden State Warriors, and whether they know how to train a dragon.
Oh, come on. I think you've used that one
honestly,
before.
I've used it like 5 times. I don't apologise, though. I make no apologies for it. But seriously, it really is last chance saloon for him, isn't it? He's one of those guys who, unfortunately for him, was put into the league in a situation where he was being, wearing his expectation as a albatross. It's really hard to kind of live up to expectations unless you've got that kind of either massively dominant physical skill set, or you're just unbelievably skillful. And unfortunately for Dragon Bender, it's not seemed to be any of those two. It would be a nice story if he could kind of find a way to hold on to any kind of realistic NBA career. But at the moment, it seems it's 10 more days to prove you're not a bust, Dragon.
Yeah. And conceptually, you've got this 7-foot guy who can stretch the floor, and he's only 22. So on paper, he seems like a good signing, but he's got G League written all over him for me.
And he's, to be fair, landing with the Warriors is not a bad place to be. They seem to be able to get some kind of production, whether it's based on their culture or whatever. And if he can hang around, great. If they can make him look great, then if they can make him look good, then that's great for them because they can flip him as an asset then. So I can't see him hanging around with the team next season, although this is now the point where he turns into some kind of super sixth man and is is part of their resurgence next year. Okay, now we'll go on to looking at the bottom of the playoff seeds, we'll call it. So the last couple of spots that teams are pushing for. Let's start in the East. So at the minute, at time of recording, obviously there are games on tonight. Brooklyn are in the 7th seed, 25 and 28. Kyrie Irving has just been reported as we came onto the show that he is going to have surgery or it's going to have a procedure, on his shoulder, which could put him out for some time. Orlando are in the 8th seed, 24 and 31. So they're 1 game back on the Nets. They're 3 games up on the Wizards, 4 games up on the Bulls, 4.5 on the Hornets, and 5 on the Pistons. And the Pistons have thrown in the towel, basically. So who is more likely to drop out of the playoffs, the Magic or the Nets? And who is most likely to take their spot? How do you see this all winding up, Tom?
Well, with the news of Kyrie going out, I think the Nets are going to be pretty good for the rest of the season. So I think they're quite far off. I think they're 7 wins off Indiana in 6th. So
yeah,
7th is probably as high as they're going to get. But I'm fairly happy that they're going to stay around in that 7th spot. I do think Orlando. I mean, the East is just so dire. Looking at those bottom standings, Washington's only 4 wins away. But I just can't see, unless Bradley Beal just goes absolutely nuts and carries them to some wins. I think Orlando's probably got the 8th seed locked up, but the 8th seed that's going to be...
So no change from you?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I also don't think there's going to be any change, but if there was going to be a drop-off, I do think it would be the Nets. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because even though you kind of joked about the Kyrie thing... I think it was a joke. Was it a joke, Tom?
Well, if you look at the actual record, then they've been a lot better without Kyrie in terms of wins and losses, anyway. But.
It's true, but the team and the team that really picked up a reputation last year of being the kind of gutsy, hard-nosed team that kind of overachieved. It's really hard to get that kind of feel and culture back into a team, especially if you then bring Kyrie into the team. And I've spoken at length about Kyrie Irving, and I refuse to do more. But but the impact that he has on the team, and then if you're going to go, okay, so last run of games after the All-Star break, let's become that gutsy, overachieving team again. And I know it's not necessarily the same roster, but if there's going to be a team that falls off, I would guess it would be the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay, so who would you have in instead then? Are we talking Washington, or would you stretch as far as the Bulls?
I don't think I can stretch. I haven't got Reggie Jackson's wingspan, so I can't stretch as far as the Bulls. No, I would say it would just take an unbelievable run from the Washington Wizards, as Tom said. Yeah.
All to get swept by the Bucks in the first round. Okay, let's move over to the West then swiftly, where it's a bit tighter. So tied in the 6th seeds and probably not going to sink any lower than that are OKC and Dallas, who are 33 and 22. Memphis are in the 8th seed, 28 and 26. Portland behind them. I think they're 4 games behind them. The Spurs are 5 games behind them, and the Spurs are pretty much cooked. And then 5.5 games are the Pelicans, who could make a run. Who knows? Who do you think Memphis can hang on to this, Josh, or is there any chance of a rookie wall derailing Jar, or what's your take on this?
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't rule out a derailed rookie wall Jar problem, but if you think about what's underneath them, I can't see a Lillard-less Blazers making a run. The Suns, as you said, are indeed cooked, and it would be one hell of an ask to expect the Pelicans this season to push for a playoffs with what's happened with Zion and the surrounding team. However, I do think if there's a team out of those 3 that have an upward trajectory and do have the talent to pull it off, and obviously the youth to pull it off, it would be the Pelicans, even though that's more of an outside bet. However, I can see it sticking to the way it is, and hopefully we get to see Ja Morant in the playoffs this year.
Mm-hmm. I just really hope it's any of those apart from Portland and the Spurs, just because we've seen that, especially with the Spurs, we've seen it play out for so long. If one of those teams is going to get into the 8th seed, which is probably going to get swept by the Lakers, please make it someone fun like Memphis or New Orleans, where we get to see a taste of either Ja or Zion and the rest of the crew. Probably be more competitive than the other two, the Portland and the Spurs, but just give us an insight as to what the future holds for the playoffs for those two guys.
Are you suggesting that the San Antonio Spurs aren't a fun basketball team?
100%. I think even
Okay.
you tweeted that just a few weeks ago that...
Yeah, wasn't it me right now after they announced that Carroll had been bought out? He had something to sort of...
And he also said that he's finally coming to terms with the fact that they're probably not going to make the playoffs this year, so unlucky.
What happens to Pop then? I know this is a completely new subject, but does Pop stick around if they don't make the playoffs and he really has no real immediate light at the end of the tunnel, and he really should just go and drink a load of wine and relax and enjoy his life in his senior years? Do you see a realistic reason, or do you see it playing out for Pop sticking around after the season?
I don't know how long he was planning on sticking around. There was talk that he was only expecting to sort of be involved for a couple more seasons, so maybe it speeds up the exit. And there's no way they will ask him to leave. It will be on his terms because of what he's done for them over the past 2 decades. Sorry.
Oh no, of course. Yeah.
Well, before that even, but it is an interesting one. Obviously, he's in charge of Team USA in the Olympics this summer, and that's going to be his one and only run around with them. So it's just, I could see him just saying, he's that kind of person where he's like, okay, call it what it is. If it's done, it's done.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up, and he signed a 3-year contract in 2019. So theoretically, he's got 2 more seasons left. However, in terms of finishing on a high, it doesn't get higher than finishing on a gold medal. So I can see a situation where we're about to see our last run of Popovich games in San Antonio, and then he kind of retires with a gold medal around his neck and heads to his own vineyard.
I'm just going to skew this conversation slightly further still. Do you think, and this feels sacrilegious as I say it, but do you think Pop's reputation is perhaps overemphasized because of the presence of Tim Duncan? I mean, if you their careers are inextricably linked. You can't get away from that. You can't objectively separate them in any way, shape, or form. But it's strange how a guy like Timmy, who with his persona held that locker room together, then but within a couple of seasons of him going, and I get there was an entire changing of the guard, but that locker room, he has not been the same since. We had, Coyne up and out of there. We had LaMarcus Aldridge kicking off within, not long after arriving, and sort of Pop having to sit down with him. Is there any correlation, do you think?
No, I mean, some of it might be exactly what we spoke about in terms of college coaches earlier on. Some of it might be he managed to get guys in an earlier generation to buy into his culture. But Popovich is undoubtedly a culture builder. He's a true great who managed to get multiple generations of players to get to an elite level. He harvested talent. He got guys to buy in for over a decade. And obviously the titles say it all, and the Coach of the Years say it all. But I do think it's completely sacrilegious, and quite frankly, Mike, you make me sick.
I'm just trying to get you to bite on something. Tom, do you think he hangs around for the next 2 years of his contract?
I'm not sure. It could be like a Tim Duncan way of he just kind of slips out quietly, and then it's not this huge thing that Pop's retiring and he says it in advance.
If he does it the same way Tim Duncan does, I can't wait for the photos of him doing his kickboxing or whatever it is going to be at the time. Drops 40 pounds.
With like no fear skateboarder shorts that are usually worn by like 13-year-olds. It's really a tremendous way though to usher in the Becky Hammond era.
Yeah,
It'd
true.
be amazing. It'd be amazing if he handed over.
Do you think it will go to Becky?
You know, you never know, do you? But if there was an organisation that would make a monumental step like that, it would probably be the San Antonio Spurs. And I actually do think a lot of the reason for that is because of the culture built by Greg Popovich, which seems to be progressive in like every facet of his being.
And you just hope that, I know we've talked about football a lot, but in the same way with Ferguson and Popovich, there's been a lot compared between those two historically. You hope that Pop doesn't go and then it kind of all falls to pieces in the same way that it has at Man United.
But let's keep that reference as well a bit longer. Like, and this is my one contribution to the football conversation. Didn't Ferguson stay on in some other role straight after retiring?
Yeah,
he moved upstairs.
I mean, I think people widely around the world are starting to call that the Beilein. Where you go upstairs and you take a role that can have a kind of more profound impact on the squad and the organisation. No, yeah, he did. He's had some health troubles since, but I think he became like a director of football or something that fell in line with what Bobby Charlton was doing. I'm not entirely sure, but he basically stuck around, had some kind of say in the decisions in terms of hiring and personnel. And I think essentially, though, he became a bit of a game day mascot. Just his presence alone was supposed to kind of, galvanize something. I don't know. Yeah, I think that was the case, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the case with Popovich, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he did a bit of a Phil Jackson before he came back and just moved somewhere outrageous in like the south of France. And
moves to a reservation in Idaho.
Yeah, and then just...
I think that's what Jackson did. No, Nebraska, wasn't it, or something? I don't know.
Yeah. And but maybe just moved to Italy to a vineyard, and then every kind of 6 months he comes for international duty to maybe still carry on coaching the USA team.
I think that seems like a good point to finish up. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to mention?
Only that I really want to move to Italy, open a vineyard, and coach the USA team. But no, nothing major.
All I had was that Josh, you've been firing the conspiracies out today. Not much has been made of so far. Kyrie not actually playing against Boston all season, which will now not be the case with his injury as well and his procedure. So perhaps he's just too much of a wet lettuce and can't take the flack that he's going to get if he goes back to the Garden.
Wet lettuce? What?
No, it's definitely a thing. I mean, I know he's had some legitimate injury worries, but he was doing it when he was in Boston. He was avoiding the Cleveland games. He would all of a sudden have personal reasons or like a slight ankle sprain or something when he was supposed to play Cleveland or go to his... And, you know, it's murky territory talking about this kind of thing because the guy actually clearly does, and it's been written and spoken about. The guy has some issues that he needs help with, and I wouldn't be surprised if that fell in line with it because he never wants to go and play against his old team. He never wants to face criticism. He reacts badly to criticism and then goes on Reddit and 4chan and finds intense kind of basement theories.
I don't think that's just him though, because even LeBron, when he left Miami, didn't go back for a while, managed to skip those games.
Do you think it's just like, why it's the regular season, why am I going back and facing an unbelievable amount of animosity for no reason? They speak to their coach and think, yeah, that's not worth it. It could have an adverse effect on the team. It could have an adverse effect on your personal season. Let's just not do that. That might be the case, but come on. I just want to see him play in Boston.
Well, you might have to wait till next year for that one.
Yeah, and then he's going to cook us with Kevin Durant. So then I won't be happy to see him.
Oh, dear. Well, you might get him in the... No, you won't. So you're gonna have if it's. I'm just trying to think where you'd need to fall to catch them, but you're not, because they're not going to get up higher than 7th. So if you overtake Toronto for that 2nd seed, you could have them in the first round.
You know what? We spent this whole podcast without me mentioning my affiliation with the Boston Celtics, and then you've really kind of brought the homer out on me right at the end.
Yep, well, the pair of you, I was waiting for it to kick off about 3 minutes into the pod, but
always happens.
But you managed to do very well. On that note, then, before it gets too Boston centric, please rate and review the pod. Give us feedback. Check us out on www.doubleclutch.uk. Email us admin@doubleclutch.uk, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @doubleclutchuk. There's a bit of a theme going on there. In fact, we're on YouTube as well under that. So, thank you very much for listening. We will catch you next time. See you soon.